And joining us is David Murphy. Hit it! Oh.
Like a boss!
There it is, David Murphy, like a boss. Thanks for joining us today, David Murphy. How you doing today, man?
Good, man. How are you?
Oh, we're great.
Very excited, Murph, and what a great guy to have on because you have played playoff games in Tampa Bay. I'd love to know, starting off, obviously you've played playoff games in different cities. You guys never lost in Tampa. What is it like, playoff environment in Tampa?
You know, playoff atmosphere is great wherever you're playing. Tampa, you know, it's a place where you go during the regular season. You might not get a ton of fans, but they showed up during the postseason. It was a lot of fun. Those Rays teams were good back then. This Rays team, even though they have been marred by injuries and, you know, Wander Franco being out, they're still a really good team. So, you know, the Rangers have their hands full, but I love the fact that if you turn on radio, you turn on, you know, TV, everybody's picking the Rays. So I just feel like the Rangers have everybody right where they want them.
That's always, I wonder, when you're in a clubhouse and you see that happening, what's that conversation like amongst the guys?
Well, I mean, there's no bigger belief than in that clubhouse. They know what they've been able to do. Obviously, they know their own strengths and weaknesses. They know that they didn't have as good of a second half and they didn't finish the season the way that they wanted to. But at the same time, you know, there's so many different opinions about momentum in the game of baseball. I definitely feel like it's real in the postseason. But I feel like once the regular season ends and the postseason begins, I feel like it's completely neutral. That's the game of baseball, and that's why Game 1 is so important. Obviously, Tyler Glasnow is going for the Rays. He's a great arm, and you know, he can rack up punch-outs. But the Rangers are a tough offense, and if they have that bat the way that they've had for most of the season, it's going to be a really good game.
Corey asked me a great question earlier in the show, Murph, and I'm just coming from the perspective of watching playoff baseball. But I do believe guys have different approaches than they do in the regular season at the plate. Can you expand on that and what an at-bat is in September? Let's just say runner on second, nobody out versus runner on second, nobody out in the playoffs.
Right, yeah. It's more important to push a run across anytime you can. You know, I know that major league teams have gone away from that for the most part in recent seasons, but that stuff is big, and there's still plenty of guys that preach it. So I think that I remember when I was in college, and one of my assistant coaches at Baylor, he would talk about just how, you know, watching baseball during the regular season versus the postseason, it's so interesting the way that you might see players just waste plenty of at-bats throughout the course of the season. You know, they'll swing at a first-pitch changeup down and away, take a poor swing, and ground out to shortstop. There's just not as much of that, and you'll see guys grind it out. You know, they'll go to 6, 7, 8, 9 pitches and lengthen the at-bat, and just each at-bat seems like it's more of a battle. There's more riding on it, and that's why it's so much fun.
Mike was opening his Zivia just now. That was very, very loud.
Thank you.
Mike.
Well, it would always tick me off, Murph, and this would be opening day. I felt like guys had different approaches opening day because it was like a playoff environment, and you'll see it in the playoffs where guys that never use the other side of the field, they're straight pull hitters. Then all of a sudden, you know, I'd go, hey, you never take a changeup away or a fastball away and shoot it to the other side. And then all of a sudden in the playoffs, you'll see guys use the whole field, especially with 2 strikes.
Yeah, no, it's great. And you'll even see guys, you know, if it's like a left-on-left matchup, you know, one that maybe this isn't the best example, but I feel like Yordan Alvarez over the years, like even though he still hits well against lefties, he doesn't hit them the same that he hits righties, but he was a nightmare for Chris Sale a few years ago against the Red Sox. And then last year, obviously hits the huge home run for them that cemented the World Series against Alvarado of the Phillies. So, yeah, each at bat is big, and just, you know, I never realized how much baseball is more like a football type of atmosphere in the postseason, at least the way that I felt in my own body and my own skin. Like I literally, when I stepped up to the plate, during the course of the regular season, you're kind of tired, and it's almost better to be tired because you're nice and relaxed up there. You use your hands as a hitter. in the postseason, I was so amped up that I had to tell myself to really breathe, really relax, because you are more amped up than you've ever been.
Somebody has asked this multiple times on our fan text, and I was kind of looking at the lineup today, and Robbie Grossman is hitting third. What's the benefit of having him in that third spot behind Seager and in front of Adolis?
Well, obviously he's a switch hitter. He's a guy that gets on base. I mean, talk about a guy that can, run an at bat to a lot of pitches. So I have not looked at the matchup numbers against Glasnow, but I'm sure there's some strategy and some thinking behind it. If you can get a guy like that draws a lot of walks on base for those guys behind him, the home runs are huge in the postseason. So obviously solo homers aren't that big as a pitcher. They don't necessarily beat you, but the 2 and the 3-run homers, those are huge.
So, Murph, I'm thinking this, just looking at the lineup, as Nate Lowe's dropped a little bit in the lineup. We know that he can struggle with velocity, and he's really struggled somewhat in the month of September. And this is, I have no clue how you were hitting in 2010 or 2011 going into the playoffs, but how much does it matter in confidence if you have been hitting well for the last 2 weeks versus Nate Lowe, for example, has just really struggled to make good contact lately?
Yeah, it's the concept of momentum. I talked about it more from a team standpoint a little while ago, but I think from an individual standpoint, once the postseason starts, and even though these guys are built a little bit differently, they're taught to stay out of the newspaper and stay off the internet and just reading what's going on. They're still human beings. So during the course of the season, you can look up at your batting average every now and then, or you can look up at your statistics. But that's what's great about the postseason. Everybody's batting average is 0 today. So regardless of how you've been feeling, you get an extra shot of adrenaline today and maybe an extra surge of bat speed, whatever tiredness that you've been feeling over the course of the last week or two, or you mentioned the month of September. It's just a little bit different feeling once you step into the box during the postseason.
Yeah, and just for our audience, so they know, in the month of September, Nate Lowe did bat 165. In his last 15 days, in his last 50 at-bats, he is 5 for 50. So, Corey, you have the next question. But just to give you an idea, Nate Lowe, why he might not be batting third in this series is he's just been struggling lately.
I'd love to see a huge moment from him today or in the next couple days for us to say, okay, he's back, baby. I've always been curious of this. Kevin and I learned the hard way at spring training our first year that you don't talk to the pitcher that's pitching that day on the couch. All right. You stay away from that guy. But one of the things I'm always kind of curious of, you're an outfielder. What's your communication? Like, these guys, are they going to talk with Jordan Montgomery today beforehand? How do they let him know, hey, we got your back, man. We're here for you.
I don't think it's going to be any different than it would be during the course of the regular season. If you go down and get a bite to eat in the food room, and he's there, you might say a few words to him, you might not. So it's really just kind of happenstance. I don't know if you're going to be intentional. You don't want to treat a postseason game like you would any other game, because you play so many. You add the 20 or 30 games you play in spring training, and then 162 in the postseason. There is a little bit more intensity, but it's the same thing, and it's the same game that these guys have played all year long.
Man, Mike, I am excited about this day just because it's playoff baseball again, man. Like, it's been that time since we haven't had that around here.
The other thing too, Murph, is, in the regular season, we get asked all the time on ballots, is this a momentum swing? How are the guys going to get over this loss if they had a tough loss? And the Rangers had tons of tough losses this year with late inning leads that were not saved by the bullpen. I'm just wondering, I never played Major League playoff baseball. This is a short series. I know you never played in a 3-game wild card series, but if this is a tough loss for the Rangers or an outstanding win by the Rangers, how do you make sure in the playoffs you come to the park as it's a brand new day and yesterday is over?
Well, I guess if you want a frame of reference, I know Rangers fans don't like talking about it and bringing them up, but I'll talk about Game 6 in 2011. It was a heartbreaking loss, the most heartbreaking of my career, and I'm sure any guy in that locker room would say the same. But there was no part of me going into Game 7 that wasn't 100% sure that we were going to be at our best and that we were going to go play our best baseball, and I really thought that we were going to win. We get off to a 2-0 lead, and that stopped pretty quickly. The Cardinals took the lead, and they held it. But early on, I mean, even though I was emotionally exhausted, mentally exhausted, I was still as hopeful and as positive as ever that we were going to go and we were going to win that World Series. It didn't happen, and so I think it's the right mindset. Not every player is the exact same, and I'm generally an optimist by nature. But at the same time, I'm just glad that these guys can turn the corner. I'm sure they were pretty worn out over the last few weeks, just, watching what the Astros were doing, watching what the Mariners were doing, watching what the Blue Jays were doing, trying to keep up with all that. I'm sure that took a little bit of a toll, but my guess is that they have the wind back in their sails a little bit because all that is over and they have a fresh slate.
What could this mean for the future of the Texas Rangers? And I'm speaking specifically somewhat about two players that I think this organization is going to keep building around besides the middle infield, and that's Josh Young and Evan Carter. Evan Carter was able to come up and bat .306 with over a 1 OPS, and that they get to play in the playoffs. Because if the Rangers don't win on Saturday, most likely they don't get the experience of playing in the playoffs. What do you think this could mean for two of the young stars for the Rangers?
When you get, any type of postseason experience, any type of big game experience, it only helps you moving forward. It helps you to slow down the game, to slow down, because you're not every major league game is the same. There's plenty of games the Rangers scored, 12 runs this year and won by 7. But when they come up and those at bats, in the ninth inning and they're facing a closer, a guy with his best stuff and the game is on the line, it's just going to slow that heartbeat down a little bit more. And then it's just going to create a situation where when they have future postseason appearances, because I feel like this is only the very beginning for the Rangers with the talent they have coming. The future is very bright. The immediate future is very bright. And so those guys are going to have more big at-bats throughout the course of their career, and it's only going to make them more ready.
What's interesting is Evan Carter has such a great eye, and he's taken a lot of strikes, but some of the strikes he's taking are balls. And I can remember last year Julio Rodriguez, his first 6 weeks to 2 months in the major leagues, they were saying he had the worst strikes called on him in Major League Baseball that were balls. And I feel like it's a short sample size, but Evan Carter has such a great eye in the minor leagues. He's brought that to the major leagues, and he's kind of not getting the benefit of the doubt. And I was just wondering, from your perspective, do you think major league umpires are still they're going to give it to the rookie a little bit? As in they're going to expand the zone and see how they handle maybe a few calls that are just off the plate and see if they handle it as a professional?
I think it's only human nature that if it's a close call, you got a guy on the mound that's maybe pitched in the big leagues 5 or 10 years. I can see where the call may go to the pitcher, in the same way. I can't think off the top of my head of who would be like today's, Barry Bonds, but obviously if Barry Bonds is in the batter's box and it's a borderline call, human nature to want to, side with Barry Bonds and not the pitcher, just because that's a big intimidating presence that's only a few feet away from you. So it's human nature. I would say that it's natural.
Before we let you go, Murph, you talked about Nelson Cruz. You talked about that 11 series. What we had Wash on, I think all you guys have all said this too. You're not in that World Series without Nelson Cruz against Detroit and how spectacular he was hitting at the plate there. Who do you think? And each one of those series always seemed like somebody was doing, had a big moment. Who do you think is going to have that big moment today? What's your prediction?
Man, I feel like if there's one hitter in every lineup that you don't want to be, you don't want that guy to beat you. That guy's obviously Corey Seager. So I would say Marcus Semien. Now, obviously, that depends on the bottom of the Rangers lineup did such a good job of, getting on base, of hitting for average this year. And that's why Marcus Semien became one of 5 leadoff hitters in the history of baseball to drive in 100 runs. And so there was 3 guys that did it this year. Only 5 have ever done it. Marcus Simeon's one of them. So I feel like he hits the fastball well. Tyler Glasnow has a good fastball, and he's just had when the game is on the line, his quality of at-bats are really impressive. So, so I think that's going to have a lot to do with the bottom of the lineup. And then, if it's not going to be Marcus, if it's going to be someone further down, I'm going to go with a guy like Jonah Heim.
Yes.
I feel like his opportunity to play in the postseason, when he times up the fastball the right way, and he can crush it, and he got a nice little run there at the end of the season.
Dude, that is fantastic stuff, Murph. We really appreciate you hopping on with us today, man. I know you're going to be rooting for the Rangers just like us today.
Yep, enjoyed it, guys, and looking forward to the game.